Get the Bell back on the show for this Monday, the 24th of July. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. A very busy week starts right now for central bankers, not just for the big names such as the US Fed, the Bank of England, as well as the ECB, the BOJ, but also for a number of African central bankers, starting today with Ghana's central bank expected to leave interest rates unchanged as inflation begins to taper off a little bit in one of the biggest economies west of the continent. But just as a bit of a curtain raiser, quite a number of economic data on tap this week, including South Africa's PPI, the key leading economic indicators, as well as PMI data and interest rate decisions from Mozambique and a few other African economies. So keep those in mind. We'll keep updating everyone the rest of the week. Of course, the two-day central bank monetary policy meeting of Nigeria's financial regulator, starts today without Godwin Emefiele. This is the first monetary policy meeting that will be held in many years without a substantive, the central bank governor on the seat. It will be very key. There'll be a whole lot monetary policy tinkering, including the FX market, since Godwin Emefiele's exit back about a month ago. So let's keep an eye on that from today. Decisions will be announced later in the evening tomorrow. Keep that in mind, to be around from 4 p.m. Nigerian time, when this acting central bank governor is expected to read out the decisions of the Monetary Policy Committee members, 11 of them. Keep that in mind tomorrow at about 4 p.m. Nigerian time. Of course, the stock market finished Friday 1.68%, very strongly to the upside. It is the BRVM, that's the French-speaking West African market for the 8 French-speaking countries in West Africa. The composite better by 0.40%, climbing to 204.7. On Friday, Egypt was closed on Sunday, which ought to be the start of the business week for the biggest markets and economy north of the continent. The Nairobi stock market down by a quarter of a percent on Friday. Again, the whole protest over higher tax, the suspension of the Finance Act by the court, and fuel prices throwing further chaos into the whole issue around where President William Ruto's administration is heading right now. Quite a lot to digest from Kenya as we speak right now. The GSE fell by 0.3%, of course, as we saw a bit of a softening on Friday across the emerging markets. Again, you've got a whole lot to chew as far as the earnings are coming through from the European and the US markets, all that in play. Again, the earnings season is ramping up today across Europe and the US, with a number of earnings on tap across some of the biggest banks like Santander in Europe later this week. Let's keep that in mind. Take it down. Let's look up what's the big news east of the continent. Of course, the protests hurting the Manufacturers Association in Kenya, reporting that they're losing about $42.3 million every day because of the protests against President Ruto's tax hike, as well as not so comfortable fuel prices. Uganda is looking to phase out its 1,000 shillings currency notes. We'll have more details on that as that progresses. And Kenyan President William Ruto is plotting a new road tax that's in the cuts crippled the Finance Act. The president is trying to wiggle his way out of the Finance Act that has been shut down by the courts and try to find a way out to move ahead with that very critical revenue generation that the country sorely needs. And Tanzania's sugar giant Kagera is taking over the South Africa's Tongaat Hewlett's sugar asset. Is a cross-border deal that is good for keeping the money on the continent and expanding the frontiers of doing business from East Africa to Southern Africa. Now let's get on to West Africa with Nigeria in the news. The whole conversation around exchange rate, the Naira still fell last week at the investors and exporters window as Nigerians try to unify the central bank's various exchange rates. The banking sector will be in the money. That's what analysts were saying over the weekend because of the exchange rate that is now favoring the banks who hold currency assets both locally and those who have substantive footprints across the continent and around the world, such as the UBA, presenting a long-term value to global investors at a private meetings or in London last week. UBA has presence in about 20 countries, including the United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom, as well as the United States. Of course, the FBN Holdings, which is the parent company of Nigeria's oldest commercial lender, reporting first half of the year, earnings hit a new high. Profit after tax came in roughly 83%. And Ghana's economy is likely to rebound after 2025. That's according to the World Bank. We'll hear from Addison, the central bank governor, later today on the direction and the state of the economy of Ghana's, by the way. Burkina Faso says it's collected about 28 billion CFA franc from the West African monetary market last week, while Cameroon is also on the market again, doing some bond sales, by the way. The ADF, which is the Africa Development Fund, of course, which is the brainchild of the AFDB group, is putting $16 million on the table for youth entrepreneurship investment bank in Liberia. The idea is to support the Liberian government and the youth who are going to creative sectors, entrepreneurship across various sectors of that economy. And that's some good news for the administration in Monrovia. Take it up to the Southern African space, and I spoke about a bit of economic data coming through this week, the June PPI data, producer price inflation data. The SARB leading economic indicator data will be out tomorrow, the 25th of July. Keep that in mind. Then, of course, you got a bit of other data later in the week, at least on Friday from South Africa as well. But Malawi, which is that small landlocked country in Southern Africa, is facing another nationwide fuel shortage. And we just hope that will not lead to riots and protests, by the way. The Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe, that's the central bank, is owing about $4 billion in food and fuel debt, that is backlog that's yet to be paid. The Zimbabwe faces very crunching time as far as FX is concerned, with the exchange rate falling very sharply against the US dollar. In the meantime, the Zimbabwe is planning the first 40,000 tons of corn exports to Rwanda in 22 years. The good news came in late last week that Zimbabwe has a bumper harvest of corn, what's called maize, some jurisdictions, because the country has a surplus of that and is making exports to Rwanda. That's one good news from Zimbabwe, despite the country's inflation at triple digits and exchange rate down the drain. Northern Platinum, in corporate news now, agrees to Impala Platinums to take about 34.5% buyout stake in RB Plat. And Glencore is expecting $4 billion 2023 full year trading profit. Again, if you look across Africa, there are a few earnings that are coming through, as well as Vodafone is expected to also report this week. There's a bit of a profit warning coming from a few other companies, such as the Kenya Power, reporting that its earnings is likely to miss estimates. You got a whole lot of first half, second quarter earnings coming through in the current week. Let's turn to North Africa with Egypt. Growth forecasts has been cut, and the Egyptian pound is expected to slip further, according to news sources. Tunisia gets $500 million from Saudi Arabia to fight the growing economic crisis in President Said's economy. The stock market in Tunisia finished nicely around 9,000 reading on the Tunis main index on Friday. The Moroccan private investment fund Almada says it's buying majority stake in Senegal's Partisan, and that's another cross-border investment and business cooperation on the continent from the north to Senegal in West Africa. The Huawei and Woni partner is looking to boost renewable integration projects in Morocco, and that is also good news for this big economy north of the continent. And that's all your business, economic, investment, and markets headline to start the new business and markets week. Get your opening bell right. Let's get on to see what happens the rest of the week. And we'll see them off. Bye for now.